The most valuable hint I can give you to start with on any zipper is to use one that's longer than what the pattern calls for, because you've got this slider, and if you have to maneuver around that bump, you're going to have a unstraight stitched area. So always use a zipper that's longer than what you need. You need to establish where the zipper begins. So I've done that here with a great big old mark. You wouldn't use a magic marker like I did, but I wanted it to be obvious. You're going to sew with regular stitch length up to that point and then change it to a basting stitch length to go the rest of the way. I would err on a generous size seam. I would prefer that you have a 3/4 inch seam rather than a 5/8. Therefore, if you know you're going to be putting a lapped zipper in, allow for 3/4 of an inch instead of 5/8 up that seam where it will be placed. Then you press that seam open. The other hint that I can give you, because you have basted this portion of it where the zipper will be, is to go ahead and take a minute to snip through every couple of threads. That way it will be easier to take it out in the end. So you've pressed it open, okay, open. And then you're going to fold it back so that you have just this one seam allowance exposed. That's what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to make sure that that metal stop is right there at the bottom of the zipper. Now it's very important that you understand in this step that the zipper coil lays not centered on the seam, but just right next to it on this exposed seam allowance. Now for this step, you can actually use your regular presser foot or you could switch to the zipper foot, but I'm going to show you that the regular presser foot can work. And I'm not going to pin it, instead I'm going to peek and stitch, peek and stitch. So I'm holding this down right there so it's right alongside of that seam. Here's where I could make use of my needle position. So I'm on straight stitch, but I'm going to go down to the width and my needle a little bit over to the left. I have a whole video on that of how you can make needle position work for you. On a lot of computerized machines or even mechanical machines on straight stitch, if you fool around with your width button, you will find that your needle can move from left to right. So I'm just placing it again on the exposed seam allowance and stitching all the way to the top. Super simple, right? The next step, I will have to have my zipper foot on, and I want to have the foot located to the right. Now what happens is that this entire portion goes back, and you take and roll that up to the left side of the coil. Did I put the zipper foot on the right side? Indeed I did, and it doesn't belong on the right side, it belongs on the left side. Why? Because this way the foot is riding on the coil, and that's the whole purpose of a zipper foot, is to have it ride opposite of where the bump of the coil is at. So I just need to switch this. I could lie and tell you that I did that on purpose just to make that an emphasized point, but I didn't. Okay, now I'm going to put my needle back in the middle, and I'm going to stitch right close to that fold. So you see again, what I'm going through is just this and this and this fold where it rolls up there. No pins, no basting, not necessary. But you see here already how far ahead I am because my zipper is longer than the opening. Oh. So in other words, if I have a pattern that calls for a 7-inch zipper, I'm going to use a 9-inch zipper. The next step is to take and fold this seam allowance over on top of this side of the tape. Now I'm going to move my presser foot over to the other side because the coil is here, so my foot needs to be over here. I'm merely attaching this seam allowance to this tape. For all intents and purposes then, the zipper is actually it. But here's where I'm going to actually be doing the top stitching to secure this outer layer to all of this. So I'm going to find where that bottom is, and you do not want to run into that bottom metal stop, so you need to take great care or you can break a needle real quick and easy. You see what I've done here? I've laid a piece of Scotch tape evenly spaced from the fold, the seam line over to the left where I want to stitch, leaving long threads to start and starting right in the well of the seam, and below that metal stop I'm going to take a couple of stitches to get over to the tape. Don't hesitate to use your hand wheel when you want to be precise. All right? Now, again, the coil is here, that's why my foot is to the right. And now I can just go right alongside that tape, not through the tape, but right alongside of it. I actually hardly ever use the tape, but I wanted to throw that in as another hint. You'll find that this part of the zipper foot just rides against the coil, and it works out just fine. Now I can remove my tape. And because I had snipped those through few threads in the basted area, this will come out real easy. I'm not going to take the time here in the video to get it all out, but you see why you wanted to baste it. And of course you'll want to pick those threads out. And be careful, you could cut through the fabric if you were just ripping right along. Now, these threads here, I would go to the back side, I would pull this bobbin thread to expose that top thread loop, pull it to the back. I would tie a knot nice and close to the base of the fabric, and then never, 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 never cut close to a knot and think it's going to stay knotted. Instead, I'm just cutting some extraneous threads here. Instead, I would put these on a needle. Just earlier today we filmed a video about burying your threads. Another place where you can use that skill. Okay, so both of them are through the eye of the needle. Now I'm just going to come down here and I'm just going to take a little stitch, maybe tie another knot, and then I'm going to take my needle and bury it between some layers here. Look it out, and then cut. Now I can promise you that that won't come undone. If we manipulate the fold of this overlap side of the zipper, do you see how that looks there? So that when this part of that facing comes down, it's over here. That's better than if it came all the way over to here and is partway covering up. Usually it's kind of like that at the top and you don't know what to do with it and your zipper can't go all the way to the top. To make that happen, you do this. Fold down that top seam allowance and then let this side come over. Now the zipper tape goes up and that top turns down. Do you see? Right. And then this side of the facing is turned back to that point so that it can then come down, clearing this edge. I hope that that is clear. I wrote an article on this with very good pictures in it, which I'll unearth and try to put into this video as well. But that gives you a nice finished edge at the top of a lapped zipper. The other side doesn't really have a problem. You see, it just goes like that. But that all together makes a much nicer finish for the very top edge of the zipper, wouldn't you say? One of those little things that us seamstresses can get our little jollies out of. My mission is to share all I know about sewing here on my channel so that you can come to love sewing just as much as I do.